Hi, this is Sarah Mikesell with the Pig Site, and today we're here with Dr. Bob Easter. He is the Professor Emeritus of Swine Nutrition and former President of the University of Illinois. Thanks for being with us today, Bob.
It's an absolute delight to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And today, Dr. Easter and I are in Omaha, Nebraska at the Midwest ASAS meeting, and you spoke today at the U.S. Soy-sponsored Swine Application Symposium. And your presentation on the history of the corn-soy diet was fascinating. For those who were not fortunate enough to attend, tell us why you shared that story with us today. What was your objective?
I was asked to do it, obviously, but I enjoyed telling the story. And I've always had a bit of a fascination with history and had the privilege of knowing some of the people that were involved earlier in the development of the corn-soy diet. And so I remember their stories, and I have a couple of things that they wrote. So it's a pleasure to be here, and the goal, I think, is to let others know there was a story behind it, and it reflects about 50 years or more of development. And if nothing, there's a lesson in patience, because it was realized early that the soybean had enormous potential as a source of protein for non-ruminant animals, pigs and poultry. But it wasn't until the discovery of vitamin B12 and the opportunity to meet all of the nutrient needs that it could be done very efficiently at the farm level. And it's to me, a fascinating story. And so my goal is so that others will know that and appreciate the effort that led us to where we are today, and also understand that the story never ends. There's always other opportunities, and that was part of the emphasis of the symposium. There are other things in the soybean that have value to the animal, and where do we go with that? And I think the future looks bright.
Yeah, we keep learning, right? What was the effect of World War II on the development of corn-soy diets?
And that's an almost unexpected thing. And I actually verified this by going to the National World War II Museum website. There were 12 million people in service during World War II in the United States. And if you think about what they were doing a lot of exercise. They needed high-calorie diets, high-energy diets. And the normal source of energy would be things that we probably don't want to eat too much of today, lard and tallow, right, and all those animal fats. And they struggled to meet those energy needs, and they came to realize that the Germans somehow had figured out through chemistry how to process soybean oil so it could be used to feed in human diets or in human food. And we use a lot of that today, of course. But one of the things that was put forward as an objective as the U.S. and other forces moved into that part of the world was to find where they were doing it and figure out what their secret was. And obviously that came back after the war, and we began to expand production of soybeans and produce soy oil for human consumption. Well, then what do you do with the byproduct? The soybean oil meal, it was called in that day. And that led to the question of, why is it that when we feed pigs a diet that's formulated only corn and soybeans, they don't grow as well as one that has some animal proteins or fish meal in it? Right. And that was a fascinating conversation. And if you look at the research literature, there was this enormous amount of effort to identify this unknown growth factor. So that's what was driving it. And in the early 1950s, that all came together with B12.
Good, very good. What was the tipping point that enabled the corn-soy diet to become a real option for pigs?
Well, I think obviously the discovery of vitamin B12 and the demonstration of that, and that story is fascinating as well, because it was known from 1900 that or earlier even, that if people were suffering from anemia, that they could eat animal protein in their diet and the anemia would be reduced. And so the development of vitamin B12 kind of paralleled some of the things we talk about in soybeans. And then after 1948, vitamin B12 was actually identified and within a short period of time produced industrially. And someone said, why can't we just solve this problem in pigs? Maybe that's the unidentified growth factor, and there were experiments that demonstrated that. And then the challenge was to get it into the industry. And that's fascinating because the industry had tried a lot of things, the producers, and none of it quite worked. And so I have some notes from one of our extension directors at Illinois, back in our extension specialist in swine. Are we ready to go tell this story? They were actually afraid that they'd be laughed at at the meeting, and obviously it was adopted over fairly quickly and became part of an industry staple.
Standard, right?
Yeah, savior. Yeah.
Very good. Excellent. With the discovery of vitamin B12, which you've mentioned, and the subsequent successful development of the corn-soy diet, what enabled adoption of this new feeding option for pork producers?
I think until that time, the process basically was a farmer would go to the feed store and buy about 400 pounds of a supplement that contained protein. Usually it could be alfalfa with some other oil seed. It could have been any number of oil seed sources or protein, maybe even soybeans. And then they would include, the feed manufacturer would have included in that some of the animal protein factor, maybe meat and bone meal or tankage, as some of it was called at the time. The farmer would take that home and grind corn and mix it with that supplement. With the advent of this diet, the farmer could buy about a 50, 70 pound bag of vitamins and minerals, including all the known vitamins plus B12 and known minerals and salt and calcium and all of that, and then just blend it with soybean meal that he bought locally or maybe a few miles away, and corn to make the feed. So it became very simple for the farmer to make feed on the farm. And there was equipment to develop to do that and so forth. So it became, by the time I got involved as a nutritionist in the industry in the early 1970s, it was kind of the standard at that time. Yeah.
Interesting. As you listen to the subsequent presentations during the U.S. Soy Symposium, what is your perspective on the continued work on the development of corn-soy diets and where they stand today?
You know, I'm fascinated always by new science and the opportunity. And obviously, I'm not doing research anymore, and particularly, and so to me, it was like opening several doors or windows to allow me to see some of the additional opportunities that we have with soybean meal to exploit other attributes beyond protein. And who knows where that's going to take us? We'll find out, and I'm sure, and there may be things far beyond what they are even thinking about today. So I said this story goes on, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Some of the functional compounds and the things with isoflavones and stuff, I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff coming out now, right?
We've known for a long time that plants have what are called bioactive molecules, but we've never really understood what they did. I just came from listening to a fascinating paper where the individual, and it was related to saponins, which are also bioactive, in soy, and they were using yucca extract as another source of saponins, and looking at DNA and the expression of genomics and the effect that these might have. And again, it's a process that'll take years to elucidate. They were trying to understand, why do we see these things, rather than to try just to demonstrate a response, but what's the underlying mechanism by which that happens. Sometimes when you get ready to move something into the market, the regulators want to know, well, how does this really work? So that's what they're trying to do. Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Easter. This was fascinating. I appreciate the perspective.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be involved in these conversations, so thanks for the opportunity as well.
This is Sarah Mikesell with the Pig Site.